The emergency alert pierced through the quiet night shift at Outpost 7, making Dr. Sarah Chen jump in her chair. She had been reviewing patient files while sipping her third cup of coffee, trying to stay awake during the station's artificial night cycle. The holographic screen in front of her flashed red with an urgent priority message. Incoming emergency transmission. The station's AI announced in its usual calm voice. Priority level alpha. Medical assistance required. Encryption level. Maximum. Sarah sat up straight, her tiredness instantly forgotten. Priority level alpha transmissions were rare out here in the frontier of space. Usually, they meant either a massive accident or someone very important needed help. Display transmission, she ordered, pushing her long black hair back and adjusting her white medical coat. The message appeared before her, floating in the air. Urgent medical assistance required. Patient status critical. Paying into 50,000 galactic CREDTs. Absolute DSCRETIO necessary. Location. Coordinates attached. No QUSTIONS ASKED. Sarah frowned. The payment offered was enough to run her entire medical bay for a year. Something didn't feel right. She checked the transmission logs and discovered something even more strange. This same request had been sent to 15 other medical facilities in the sector. All of them had refused. Computer, why did the other facilities decline? She asked. Unknown. All facilities cited technical difficulties or facility limitations as reasons for refusal. That made even less sense. Sarah knew at least 3 of those facilities were better equipped than her small outpost. They had no reason to refuse a patient, especially not one offering such a huge payment. Her communication screen lit up again. This time, it was her superior, Dr. Roberts, calling from his quarters. Chen, I know you've seen the transmission. His tired face appeared on the screen. Don't accept it. Something's not right here. But sir, someone needs medical help, Sarah protested. Our oath doesn't come with conditions. If someone's dying. This isn't a suggestion, doctor. It's an order. Whatever's going on here, 15 other facilities with more experience turned it down. They must have good reasons. Sarah looked at the pulsing emergency signal. Her fingers hovered over the controls. Everything about this situation screamed danger, but she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, someone was desperately needed help, someone that others had turned away. She remembered why she had become a doctor in the first place. Back on Earth, her grandfather had died because no hospital would treat him during a political uprising, all citing security concerns. She had promised herself that she would never turn away someone in need, no matter the circumstances. I'm sorry, sir, Sarah said firmly, but I'm accepting the call. She pressed the acceptance button before Dr. Roberts could protest further. The screen immediately filled with new information. A small transport ship would arrive in 20 minutes. The patient's details were surprisingly sparse, just basic vital signs that showed a severely unstable condition. Dr. Chen, you're risking your career, Dr. Roberts warned. I'll have to report this. Then reported, Sarah replied, already preparing her medical bay. But first, help me get ready for the patient. Whatever's coming, they need a doctor who is willing to help. As she rushed through the station's corridors, gathering supplies and preparing emergency protocols, Sarah had no idea that her decision would not only change her life, but also the relationship between humans and one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. All she knew was that someone needed help, and she had chosen to answer that call. The station's docking alert sounded. The mysterious patient had arrived. The medical bay doors slid open, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. 8 massive figures in gleaming black armor marched in, carrying a hover stretcher between them. But it wasn't their imposing presence that made her heart skip a beat. It was their patient. On the stretcher lay one of the most beautiful and terrifying creatures Sarah had ever seen. The alien was easily 3 meters long, with an iridescent exoskeleton that shifted colors like oil on water. Multiple limbs were tucked against its body, and despite its obvious injury, there was something undeniably regal about its presence. "Are you the medical officer?" one of the guards asked, his translator making his voice sound like grinding stones. Sarah nodded, already moving forward with her scanner. "I'm Dr. Chen. What happened to the patient?" "Poisoned," another guard said. "During a covered operation. We need absolute secrecy." Sarah's scanner beeped urgently. The patient's vital signs were chaotic, internal temperature far too high. As she moved closer, the alien's eyes opened, all four of them, focusing on her with startling intelligence. "You're smaller than expected," the alien spoke, her voice surprisingly melodic despite her condition. "Are you not afraid, little human?" "I'm too busy trying to save your life to be afraid," Sarah replied, already preparing antitoxin treatments. "I need to know what kind of poison we're dealing with." A sound like clicking crystals emerged from the alien. A laugh, Sarah realized. "Direct. I like that. I am Queen Cursed of the Swarm Dominion, and I was betrayed by my own kind." Sarah nearly dropped her scanner. Everyone knew about the Swarm Dominion, the most powerful mercenary force in the galaxy. Their queen was said to be ruthless, brilliant, and nearly impossible to kill. Yet here she was, fighting for her life in Sarah's small medical bay. The poison, one guard explained, was engineered specifically for her biology. Other medical facilities refused treatment when they realized who she was. They feared retaliation from rival hives. Sarah connected monitors to the Queen's exoskeleton, watching as data flooded her screens. The poison was like nothing she'd ever seen before. It was systematically shutting down the Queen's organs, one by one. "Why did you accept?" Queen Cursed asked, her voice growing weaker. "You must know helping me makes you a target." Sarah didn't look up from her work as she answered. "Because you're my patient. That's all that matters right now." She noticed something strange in the poison's molecular structure. It reminded her of something. "This looks similar to Earth's bombardier beetle secretions," she muttered. "Computer, cross-reference with known Earth insect defense mechanisms." The Queen's guards exchanged looks. One stepped forward. "You think this poison is based on Earth insects? Modified to work on swarm biology?" "Yes," Sarah said, her fingers flying over the controls. "Whoever did this knew enough about Earth biology to weaponize it against you. But that means that you might be the only one who could recognize and treat it," Queen Cursed finished, her eyes gleaming with new interest. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. "Warning," the station AI announced. "Multiple unauthorized ships approaching. Hostile intent detected." The guards immediately moved into defensive positions around the medical bay. "They followed us," one growled. "They mean to finish what the poison started." Sarah looked at her patient, then at her readings. She was close to understanding the poison's structure, but she needed more time. The Queen was getting weaker by the minute. "How long can you hold them off?" she asked the guards. "Long enough," Queen Cursed answered for them. "The question is, little human doctor, can you save me before they break through?" Sarah started preparing her treatment protocols. "Watch me try." Sarah's hands moved quickly as explosions rocked the medical bay. She had converted one of her diagnostic machines into a makeshift chemical analyzer, something that would have made her old medical school professors cringe. But desperate times called for creative solutions. "Your Majesty, I need you to stay conscious," she said, noticing the Queen's eyes starting to dim. "Talk to me. Tell me about your home world." Queen Cursed's massive form shuddered. "You wish to make small talk at a time like this?" Another explosion shook the room. Outside the sealed medical bay doors, the sounds of combat grew louder. The Queen's guards stood ready, their weapons humming with deadly energy. "It's not small talk," Sarah explained, adjusting her equipment. "The poison is affecting your nervous system. I need to know if you're staying coherent." She checked her readings. Besides, no one's ever heard a queen of the swarm talk about home. A weak, clicking laugh came from the queen. Clever human. Very well. Our cities rise from crystal spires, reaching into purple skies. The young ones learn to fly among. Stay with me, Sarah urged, noting how the queen's vital signs were dropping. Her computer beeped with new analysis results. Just as I thought. The poison has the same base structure as bombardier beetle acid, but it's been modified to target your species' unique biology. One of the guards turned briefly from his defensive position. Can you counter it? Working on it. Sarah pulled up her database of Earth insects. The bombardier beetle produces its defensive spray by mixing two chemicals. If this poison works the same way, she started typing rapidly. I need to create a third chemical that will disrupt the reaction. The station's AI voice cut through the room. Warning. Hull breach detected in Sector 7. Security barriers failing. How long do you need? The lead guard demanded. Sarah looked at her calculations. 10 minutes to synthesize the antidote. Maybe 15 to make sure it's safe. You have 5, he replied grimly. Queen Kirst's largest arm suddenly shot out, grabbing Sarah's wrist. Despite her weakened state, the grip was like iron. Tell me, Doctor, why do you try so hard? Others would let me die. Sarah met all 4 of the Queen's eyes without flinching, because that's not what humans do. Not the good ones, anyway. She gently removed the Queen's grip. Now, save your strength. I'm about to try something really stupid. She rushed to her medicine cabinet, pulling out various vials. Earth-based medicines weren't meant for alien biology, but she had an idea, if she could combine them in just the right way. The medical bay doors groaned under a heavy impact. 2 of the guards braced themselves against them. They're breaking through, one shouted. Sarah mixed chemicals with steady hands, ignoring the chaos around her. She had trained as a combat medic on Earth. Pressure was nothing new. The mixture in her vial turned from green to bright purple. This is going to hurt, she warned the Queen, loading the mixture into an injector. But if I'm right, it should buy us time by slowing down the poison spread. And if you're wrong, Kirst asked. Then I just made it worse. But you're dying anyway. So, the Queen's crystalline laugh was stronger this time. Do it. Sarah pressed the injector against the Queen's exoskeleton and pushed the plunger. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Kirst's whole body convulsed, her armor plates rattling against the medical bed. The vital signs monitor went crazy, and then suddenly steadied. It's working, Sarah exclaimed. The poison's progress has slowed by 60%. Queen Kirst's eyes brightened. Remarkable. Perhaps there's hope yet. The medical bay doors exploded inward in a shower of metal and sparks. Sarah dove for cover as the Queen's guards opened fire, energy weapons lighting up the room like a lightning storm. Through the smoke and chaos, Sarah could see more armored figures pushing through the doorway. The real fight was about to begin. Energy bolts crisscrossed the medical bay, leaving scorch marks on the walls. Sarah crawled behind a medical cabinet, her heart pounding. She needed to get back to her workstation to finish the antidote, but the attackers had her pinned down. Protect the doctor, Queen Kirst commanded, her voice stronger thanks to Sarah's temporary treatment. She is our only hope. 3 of the Queen's guards formed a living shield around Sarah's workstation, while the others engaged the attackers. The air filled with the smell of ozone and burning metal. Dr. Chen. The station's AI crackled through damaged speakers. Security teams are trapped in the lower levels. You are on your own. Sarah peeked around the cabinet. The attackers wore armor similar to the Queen's guards, but theirs was a dull red instead of black. She counted at least 12 of them. Give us the Queen, their leader demanded, and we'll let the human live. Counter offer, Sarah shouted back. Leave now, and I won't have to patch up any of you after her guards finish this fight. Queen Kirst made that crystalline laughing sound again. The human has spirit. Now you see why I chose this place. One of the guards turned to Sarah. We can hold them back. Get to your station. Sarah nodded, took a deep breath, and sprinted across the room. Energy bolts sizzled past her, so close she could feel their heat. She slid into her chair and immediately started working on the antidote again. Your Majesty, she called out while typing. Now might be a good time to tell me why these people want you dead. Kirst shifted on the medical bed, her iridescent armor reflecting the weapon flashes. I discovered corruption in the highest levels of our hive worlds. Military leaders selling secrets, poisoning rival queens, starting wars for profit. And let me guess, Sarah said, mixing chemicals carefully despite the chaos. They didn't like being exposed. They feared what would happen when I presented evidence to the High Council. The Queen confirmed. The poison was their insurance policy. A massive explosion rocked the room. 2 of the red-armored attackers had breached the sidewall. Sarah watched in horror as they aimed some kind of launcher at her workstation. But before they could fire, Queen Kirst rose from her bed. Despite her weakened state, she moved with terrifying speed. Her multiple arms grabbed both attackers, crushing their weapons like paper. No one, the Queen declared, her voice booming, threatens my doctor. The remaining attackers fell back, clearly not expecting their poisoned target to be able to fight. Sarah used the distraction to finish mixing the antidote. Your Majesty, she called out. The cure's ready, but you need to get back here now. The Queen tossed aside the 2 attackers and moved back toward the medical bed, her guards providing covering fire. Sarah could see the temporary treatment wearing off. Kirst's movements were becoming sluggish again. Even if you save her, the enemy leader shouted, more will come. The corruption goes deeper than you know. Then we'll be ready, Sarah replied, loading the antidote into an injector. As the Queen reached her, she added quietly, but first, let's make sure you live to fight another day. She pressed the injector against the Queen's exoskeleton, just as another wave of attackers burst through the doorway. The guards formed a tight circle around them, weapons blazing. How long until we know if it works? Kirst asked. Sarah checked her monitors. About 3 minutes. Think your guards can hold that long? The Queen's eyes gleamed. They must. I have much to teach you about our medical technology, if we survive this. Sarah smiled grimly. When we survive this, I didn't come this far to lose my most interesting patient. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours as Sarah watched her monitors. The antidote was working its way through Queen Kirst's system while the battle raged around them. The medical bay, once pristine and white, now looked like a war zone. Vital signs are stabilizing, Sarah announced, her eyes fixed on the screens. Blood toxin levels are dropping. The Queen's color was changing too. Her iridescent armor, which had become dull from the poison, was starting to shimmer again. I can feel my strength returning, Kirst said, her voice growing stronger. A blast hit nearby, showering them with sparks. One of the Queen's guards fell, his armor smoking from a direct hit. Sarah instinctively moved to help him. Stay with the Queen, the injured guard ordered. We can still fight. The enemy forces had taken cover behind overturned medical equipment. Their leader watched through the smoke, realizing his plan was failing. Impossible, he shouted. That poison was engineered by our best scientists. Your scientists, Sarah called back while checking the Queen's vitals, never considered that someone would recognize its Earth origins. You made it too similar to a bombardier beetle's defense mechanism. Queen Kirst's eyes suddenly blazed brighter. The antidote, it's done more than expected. She rose from the medical bed, her full height making the ceiling seem low. All 4 of her eyes were glowing with an intense blue light. Sarah checked her readings and gasped. The cure isn't just stopping the poison. It's breaking it down into chemicals your body can use for energy. You're literally turning their weapon against them. The Queen's laugh echoed through the room, but this time it wasn't the gentle crystal sound from before. It was powerful, almost predatory. Ironic. Their perfect weapon becomes my strength. She looked down at Sarah. "Stay behind me, Doctor. It's time I showed them why I lead the swarm." What happened next left Sarah speechless. Queen Cursed moved with incredible speed, her multiple limbs becoming blur. She reached the nearest attackers before they could react, disarming them with precise strikes. Their energy weapons clattered to the floor. "Your Majesty," Sarah called out, "don't overdo it. The antidote is still." "Trust me, little doctor," Cursed replied, lifting 2 attackers off the ground. "I've never felt better." The enemy leader backed away, finally showing fear. "This isn't possible. The High Council will hear of this." "Yes, they will." The Queen's voice was cold. "They'll hear how you failed, how a human doctor defeated your poison, and how the evidence of your corruption still exists." Sarah watched in amazement as the remaining attackers dropped their weapons and surrendered. The Queen's guards quickly secured them, using medical restraints from Sarah's supplies. "To think," Cursed said, returning to Sarah's side, "all other facilities refused to help because they feared making powerful enemies. Instead, you've helped expose a conspiracy and gained powerful allies." Sarah shrugged, already checking the injured guard's wounds. "I was just doing my job. Though I admit, this was a bit more exciting than my usual night shift." The Queen made her crystal laugh sound again, gentler this time. "You humans are remarkable. You took a weapon designed to kill me and turned it into something that made me stronger." She placed one of her hands on Sarah's shoulder. "My hive worlds need this kind of thinking. Would you consider a more permanent position?" Before Sarah could answer, the station's AI interrupted. Multiple ships detected entering the system. Signatures matched swarm High Council vessels. Queen Cursed's eyes gleamed. Perfect timing. "Now, Doctor, shall we show them what happens when humans and swarm work together?" Sarah smiled, reaching for her medical kit. "Lead the way, Your Majesty. I have a feeling we're about to make galactic history." The High Council ships arrived with all the grandeur Sarah expected from the swarm's leadership. Through the medical bay's damaged viewport, she watched 5 massive vessels take position around the small outpost. Each one was easily 20 times the size of the station. "Don't be nervous," Queen Cursed said, noticing Sarah's expression. "You've done nothing wrong." "Tell that to my boss," Sarah replied, looking at the unconscious form of Dr. Roberts on a medical bed. He had tried to help during the fight and taken a glancing hit from an energy weapon. "I disobeyed direct orders and turned our medical bay into a battlefield." The Queen's crystalline laugh filled the room. "Your boss will soon understand that you've brought great honor to this outpost." The station's comm system crackled to life. "Outpost 7, this is High Counselor Vexthra. Prepare for our arrival." Within minutes, the medical bay filled with new visitors. The High Council members were even more impressive than the Queen's guards. Each wore ornate armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Their leader, Vexthra, towered over everyone except Queen Cursed. "My Queen," Vexthra began, "we received reports of an assassination attempt." He stopped, noticing Sarah. "Why is this human here?" "This human," Cursed said proudly, "is the reason I'm alive." When all others refused treatment, she not only accepted but found a cure that no one else could have discovered. Sarah stepped forward, holding her medical tablet. The poison was based on Earth insect biology. "I have the full analysis here, along with—" Silence. Another council member interrupted. "A human has no place in these matters." Queen Cursed's eyes flashed dangerously. "That human has earned the right to speak, and what she discovered proves everything I've been investigating." She gestured to the captured attackers. These traitors used Earth-based biotechnology in their poison. Technology they could only have obtained through illegal weapons trades, the very corruption I've been tracking. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Sarah noticed some looked more nervous than others. "The evidence is clear," Cursed continued. "The poison's composition proves connections to illegal weapons dealers. The attack on a civilian medical station proves their desperation. And this human doctor's cure proves that isolation between species has only made us weaker. Sarah watched in amazement as 3 council members suddenly dropped to their knees. "We confess," one said. "We were part of the conspiracy. The weapons trades, the wars, all of it." Vexthra's armor rippled with anger. "Treason. Guards, arrest them." As the guilty council members were led away, Queen Kirst turned to Sarah. "Your human medicine did more than save my life, Doctor. It helped expose a corruption that has plagued our worlds for generations." "I still don't understand something," Sarah said. "Why didn't they just kill you directly? Why use such a complicated poison?" The Queen's eyes twinkled. "Because they needed my death to look natural. A poison that mimicked a known toxin would have avoided suspicion. They never imagined a human doctor would recognize its true nature." Vexthra approached Sarah, studying her carefully. "Perhaps it is time we reconsidered our relationship with humans. Your kind's different perspective clearly has value." "That's what I've been trying to tell you," Kirst said. "And I have a proposal to start this new era." She placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Dr. Chen will establish the first ever joint human swarm medical program. With the Council's approval, of course." Sarah blinked in surprise. "I will." The Queen's crystalline laugh returned. "Unless you prefer to go back to quiet night shifts at this outpost." Looking around at her destroyed medical bay, Sarah smiled. "Well, when you put it that way, I guess I have some packing to do." Sarah stood at the window of her new laboratory on the swarm homeworld, watching the crystal spires glitter in the purple sunset. 3 months had passed since the events at Outpost 7, and her life had changed more than she could have imagined. "Dr. Chen," a young swarm assistant called from the doorway. "The emergency cases have arrived." Sarah turned from the window and smiled. Her medical bay here was everything she could have dreamed of. Clean, modern, and filled with both human and swarm technology. Queen Kirst had spared no expense. "What do we have?" Sarah asked, following her assistant to the treatment area. "Mining accident. 3 workers caught in a tunnel collapse. Traditional swarm medicine isn't working." The injured workers lay on specialized beds that Sarah had designed herself. Their exoskeletons were cracked, and their breathing was labored. Other swarm doctors stood back, watching curiously as Sarah approached. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her scans. "Their bodies are trying to heal the wrong way. Swarm biology usually repairs exoskeletons from the outside in, but with crush injuries." She pulled out a modified human bone knitting device. "We need to work from the inside out." The other doctors chittered among themselves as Sarah worked. When she had first arrived, they had been skeptical of human medical techniques. Now they crowded around to watch her work, taking notes and asking questions. 2 hours later, all 3 miners were stable and healing. Sarah was updating their charts when Queen Kirst entered the medical bay. Everyone immediately bowed, but the Queen waved them back to work. "Another successful treatment," Kirst observed, her iridescent armor gleaming. "The High Council is impressed. Your Medical Academy proposal has been approved." Sarah's eyes widened. "Really? They're going to let me teach human medicine to swarm doctors?" "Not just that." The Queen's crystal laugh echoed through the room. "They want you to teach swarm medicine to human doctors as well. A true exchange of knowledge." One of the older swarm doctors stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I must admit I was wrong about the human. Her methods are unorthodox, but effective. Today she saved 3 lives that our traditional treatments could not." "That's what humans do best," Kirst said. "They see problems differently. They find solutions where we see only obstacles." She turned to Sarah. "Show them what you discovered about our healing processes." Sarah pulled up her research on the main screen. Swarm biology is amazing at healing surface injuries, but struggled with internal damage. Human bodies are the opposite. We heal from the inside out. By combining both approaches, she showed them the scan of the healing miners. We get the best of both worlds. "And this is just the beginning," the Queen announced. Dr. Chen has already trained 10 swarm doctors in human techniques. Soon, we will send them to other hive worlds to spread this knowledge. A young swarm doctor raised her hand. But what about the traditionalists? Some still say we shouldn't mix our medicine with human ways. Sarah smiled. Show them today's patients. In the past, those miners might have died or been permanently injured. Instead, they'll be back at work in a week. Results speak louder than arguments. Queen Kirst placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder, a gesture that had become familiar. When you saved my life, Doctor, you did more than cure a poison. You showed us that isolation makes us weaker. Together, we become stronger. Sarah looked around at her mixed team of human and swarm medical staff. Speaking of together, she said, I have some new ideas about emergency treatment protocols. Who wants to help me test them? Every hand and appendage in the room raised eagerly. The Queen's crystal laugh filled the air again. You see, this is how change begins. Not with grand speeches or political deals, but with one human doctor who wasn't afraid to try something new. 1 year after the assassination attempt at Outpost 7, Sarah stood before the High Council chamber. The massive room was filled with representatives from every hive world, their armor creating a rainbow of shifting colors. Queen Kirst sat at the center, her presence as commanding as ever. Dr. Sarah Chen, the Queen announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. You stand before us today, not just as a doctor, but as a bridge between our peoples. Sarah smoothed her formal medical uniform, a unique design that combined human and swarm styles. Behind her stood dozens of her students, both human and swarm, who had completed her new medical training program. Your original reward was to be 50,000 galactic credits, Kirst continued. But today, we offer something far more valuable. The Queen pressed a crystal on her throne. The chamber's huge screens lit up, showing medical data scrolling endlessly. Sarah's eyes widened as she realized what she was seeing. This, Kirst announced, is the complete medical database of the Swarm Dominion. Knowledge collected across thousands of years from hundreds of species. We grant this to humanity, with you as its guardian. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even after a year of cooperation, such openness was unprecedented. Your Majesty, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her shock. This is too much. This knowledge, it's priceless. The Queen's crystal laugh rang out. Indeed it is, and that is why you deserve it. She gestured to the screens. Already your combination of human and swarm medicine has saved thousands of lives. Imagine what humanity could do with our full knowledge. One of Sarah's human students stepped forward, Dr. James Martinez, sent from Earth's best medical school. The applications are endless, he said excitedly. The swarm's regeneration techniques alone could revolutionize human surgery. And human adaptive thinking has already improved our treatments, added Kestva, a young swarm doctor Sarah had trained. Together, we are stronger than apart. Sarah looked at the data flowing across the screens. Cures for diseases she never heard of, surgical techniques that seemed like magic, biological understanding that went far beyond human science. There is one condition, Queen Kirst said, rising from her throne. You must continue your work here. The academy you've built must grow. This knowledge cannot flow only one way. Of course, Sarah replied without hesitation. My students are already developing new treatments that combine both our medical traditions. This database will only accelerate that progress. The Queen moved down to stand before Sarah. When you saved my life that night, you could have simply treated me and sent me away. Instead, you showed us a better way. You proved that our differences make us stronger. Suddenly, every member of the High Council stood. Their armor plates shifted in unison, creating a rippling wave of color through the chamber. The age of isolation is over, Kirst declared. Let this gift mark the beginning of true cooperation between our peoples. Let it be known that humanity's greatest strength is not their technology or their weapons, but their willingness to help others, to think differently, to heal rather than harm. Sarah looked at her students, humans and swarms standing together, ready to learn from each other. She thought back to that night in the small medical bay, when she'd chosen to accept a mysterious patient despite all warnings. "Thank you, Your Majesty," she said finally. "But the greatest reward isn't this database. It's seeing what we can achieve when we work together." Queen Kirst's eyes sparkled. "Well said, Doctor. Now shall we show the galaxy what human ingenuity and swarm knowledge can really do?" Sarah smiled, already thinking of the possibilities. "I think we've only just begun." As she left the chamber that day, Sarah knew she had helped create something far greater than a medical partnership. She had helped build a bridge between worlds, one patient at a time. The little human doctor who dared to help an alien queen had changed the galaxy forever.